Thank you all for attending our presentation on the 4 functions of behavior tonight. We'll do some introductions. So I'm Miss Newcomb. I am a kindergarten TK K1 special day class teacher for Long Beach Unified School District. Right now I'm getting a master's in special education and I am participating in the CRISP grant at Cal State Long Beach. We're focusing on teaching students self-determination skills, which is skills like choice making and self-advocacy, helping students, take charge of their own decisions and take charge in their own life. And I'm going to be leading this presentation tonight with Mia, my partner in the CRISP grant.
Hi everyone, my name is Mia Rial. I am also on the CRISP grant. I am a first-year school psychology student here at Cal State Long Beach.
Awesome. And just so everyone knows, this meeting is being recorded for our the CRISP grant YouTube channel. So it's supposed to be a resource for parents, just so you all know. All right, we'll go over our agenda. We're going to start with just doing a quick definition of behavior as well as the function, what that means. We're going to go into detail about the 4 functions of behavior. We're going to talk about what some of that support looks like at school. And then we'll end with resources and also a question and answer session. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. What is behavior? Behavior is any action that is specific, measurable, and observable. So for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the maybe negative or challenging behaviors we see at school, but also mentioning the positive behaviors and what we want the students to be doing instead of engaging in some of the more negative behaviors. We want to keep in mind that behavior can be a form of communication. Usually the students are using these behaviors to tell us something. That leads into every behavior has a function. The students have a reason, a purpose for showing some of these behaviors. And I think this is especially important to keep in mind for our students who have difficulties with communication, whether that be because of autism or another disability. These students are having a hard time using their words or expressing, oh, maybe I don't want to do this activity right now, or I'm done with this toy, I want to play something else. They could be using behaviors to say that instead as they're developing some of their communication abilities. So here we have, why should we look for the function of behavior? And again, the function is the reason that the behavior is happening. Behavior is learned. The students are exhibiting these behaviors because for whatever reason, this behavior got them what they wanted in the past. So for example, one that we see a lot at school, we have here, present a work activity. The child swipes the work to the floor, or maybe they run away. And then in the past, they've gotten out of doing work from doing that. So they're going to keep doing that. So also up here we have, it's important to understand why the behavior is happening. We want to look at the antecedent event. That's what happens before the behavior starts. So for example, right here in the black, we have the behavior. Child has a tantrum, they yell and hit. What happened before? We asked the child to clean up the toy. So maybe why did they hit us? They might have been frustrated. They didn't want to clean up yet. They wanted to tell us, oh, I want more time with the toy, but they didn't have a way to express them. Same here, we present a work activity. The child swipes the work to the floor. Why did they swipe? They didn't want to do the activity. Once we understand the function, we can help to teach the student to get their needs met in a more appropriate way. So that's what the focus of this presentation is going to be about.
Okay, so when we look at the 4 functions of behavior, there is an acronym that we use that makes it a little more easier to remember, and the acronym is SEAT. So SEAT, the S stands for sensory, E stands for escape, A stands for attention, and T stands for tangible, which is also known as access. So they want to gain access to something. We'll go into each function in more detail throughout this presentation, but we just want to remember that behavior doesn't have to be specific to only one function and that it is possible to have multiple functions at once.
So sorry, everyone. I have a parent who never got the Zoom link from Cal State Long Beach, so I was just going to send it to her really fast. Sorry about that. A quick
I can
pause if
share
that's
the
okay.
screen.
Mia can share to keep the
Mhm,
presentation going. Thank you, Mia.
mhm. So our first function is sensory. When we look at sensory, we might consider that this behavior feels good to your child and may help them self-regulate. Self-regulate meaning like it helps them calm down. Some examples of sensory behaviors include like rocking back and forth in a chair, hand flapping, maybe chewing on their fingers or an item of choice like a blanket, things like that. We may also see them humming. Some students like to repeat things that they hear in videos. Uh, so when we're considering if this may be the function of their behavior, is it something that your child is doing when they're alone? Maybe when no one's looking. They may do it still when other people are around, but it's really more just a self-soothing thing. You may do it to help them stay focused, especially like we see in the classroom. A student may be rocking back and forth in their chair, but we know that they're still looking at the video or they're still paying attention to the lesson. So we really want to consider why are they doing it before putting in rules like, oh, sit nicely in your chair. And also consider the situations where it happens. Other ways, or well, that's on the next one. Some sensory replacement behaviors for maybe say you want them to stop chewing like on their hands, on a blanket, we could look for alternative sensory toys that match that behavior. We can also model self-regulation strategies such as taking a movement break, teaching your child how to ask for breaks and practicing deep breathing. So some examples of deep breathing would be like taking the time to smell the flower, like or blow out the candle and things like that. We could also want to encourage appropriate ways for them to get the same sensory input and praise them when they do. When we want, so some examples of sensory toys that would be giving the same input would be like a chewy toy. We can give them, some students have it like as a necklace, so it's just always on them. And you can give them a reminder to use that toy when you see that they're beginning the chewing behavior. For students that have like a lot of energy, they can use a trampoline. Um, It doesn't have to be a really big trampoline. It could just be like a single one for when they have a lot of energy. A lot of kids really like fidget toys right now, and they're a good redirection to keep hands busy. Some kids may have like hair pulling behaviors or things like that. So we just want to redirect that behavior into something that keeps their hands busy. Other students may like physical touch and things like that. So they can use a weighted blanket to provide a calming sensory touch input. Next, we'll be going into escape and avoidance. Brittany, did you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I'm finishing up the email to her so I can jump in when I'm done with that. And then I think if you just click the paragraph on the top of the screen will
Okay,
come in. Yeah.
just double checking. All right, so escape and avoidance behaviors typically occur because a child doesn't want to complete an activity or demand. Sometimes you might see this at home, like if you ask them to do something and they run away or they start throwing things. Other examples of protest behavior would be like saying, no, I don't want to. If they're not ready to communicate with their words, it can also be seen as screaming or aggression. This may be the function of their behavior if it occurs as soon as a non-preferred direction or task is given to them. So maybe if you ask your child, "Oh, can you please put on your shoes?" and they start throwing their shoes, it might be escape. Same thing with running away. Some replacement behaviors that we want to use when trying to address the escape behavior would be teaching a child to ask for a break. So at school, I know Miss Newcomb uses break cards, and she added an example of the break area that she has in the classroom. And then posted in that break area are some self-regulation strategies to calm down. And then at home, this may look different for you. Maybe it's like just taking time to relax in their bedroom or just sitting on the couch. Well, the important thing that we want to remember is to try to follow through with the task that was asked in the first place. So once the child finishes their break, we want to follow through with the demand. So we can shorten that task and use prompting as needed.
All right, thank you, Mia. I'll go over the next slide. So here are some more strategies to help with escape. These are antecedent strategies. So once you notice a pattern of there's something going on at home, maybe it's they don't want to brush their teeth or they don't want to sit at the table during dinner. These are some strategies that you can put in place before that undesired event occurs for the student to help them be successful at completing the task. There are also strategies that you can use. Say that they get upset during trying to complete a task, they escape, they take their break, and then you have them come back to the task and they still don't want to do it. These are also some other strategies that you can use to help with that follow through. So the first one here is called the Premack principle. We use this a lot in our classroom. And this is just that the student earns a highly motivating item or activity after completing the unpreferred task. So here's an example of a visual we use. In this case, it's putting on shoes. So first put your shoes on, then you can go outside. And in our class, the students are allowed to take their shoes off in their break area. Sometimes the shoes seem to bother them, but they know that after break, they have to, put their shoes back on and go back to their station. If a student is really having a problem with that, then sometimes I'll make a specific visual for them for shoes on. Then you can earn this a really reinforcing toy or whatever it is that would motivate them to keep their shoes on. And also for this, if it's a task that's really, really unpreferred, you can pick the thing that they earn, can be something they only earn after finishing that task so that it's really, really motivating for them. Another thing that we use a lot in our classroom is a timer, giving students a visual cue of when the task will be over. This is something we use at the beginning of the school year a lot. If a student doesn't want to sit in their chair, they just want to go to the break area to play or walk around the classroom, we'll use a timer and maybe pair it with that Premack visual of, okay, first we're going to sit, show them the timer. Sometimes we start with as little as 10 seconds for sit, and then you can earn, your toy, your break, your walk, whatever it is. And then as they're becoming more successful with that, we'll increase the amount of time that we're expecting them to do the activity. And this could work at home for something like brushing teeth. I've seen with students in the past, start with having them hold the toothbrush to their mouth for like 5 seconds, and then, yay, you did it. When the timer goes off, awesome, give them a lot of praise. And then as they're becoming more successful and with that, increase the time spent on that task. Another thing that we'll do is we'll shorten the length of the unpreferred task. So here's a picture of example of that, like a work activity in class. If you can see here, the adult already filled out a good portion of it. The student just has to match a few pieces and then they're done. We give them a lot of praise, we give them their reward, and then as they become more successful with this, we increase the time that they're expected to work or the amount of work that they're doing. So these are really great strategies for students who are showing some of those escape behaviors.
Awesome. So our next behavior that we're going to look at are attention-seeking behaviors. Usually we see these behaviors when the child is looking to have a need met when other methods haven't worked. Sometimes they want to make like a physical connection. Maybe they just want a hug, a kiss from mom, things like that. There are two types of attention. There's positive attention and negative attention. And sometimes children do want the negative attention. They want to get a reaction out of you. So we just want to be conscious of the type of attention that we're giving to the child. And we'll get into that in a little more detail on the next slide. Some examples of attention-seeking behavior include like tapping your arm, maybe putting their hand in your face for you to look at them, yelling or throwing objects. This one is usually seen also when when the child is looking for access to something. Maybe they need you to look at them so they can have what they want. So it's just another example of sometimes they don't have only one function. Sometimes they need to grab your attention when you're in the middle of something. Maybe they're laughing or smiling just to to get a rise out of you. And you also want to consider if the behavior stops after the attention is given. I know for us in homes, we are addressing attention replacement behaviors by encouraging them to use their words to ask for attention. So like saying, look, or play with me. We also encourage like gentle taps on the arms or hands for attention. Sometimes like when they want you to look, they'll hit you a little harder. So just modeling that gentle touch and just having that patience with them when they're learning that. You can also try to set expectations for when you can give attention. Because I know we're always super busy, but maybe if you're in the middle of washing dishes, you can let them know, hey, I'll be with you as soon as I'm done. And then just like following through with that as soon as you're finished, try to spend more time with them. And when you're responding, try to respond verbally and look at them so they know that you see them. A lot of the time students will appreciate that having a reason and that you let them know why you aren't able to respond. And when you're teaching this replacement behavior, you just want to use a lot of positive praise and affection consistently. So going back to negative attention and positive attention, negative attention can look like when lecturing, punishment, using threats, yelling at them. Uh, some students worked with in the past, they'll ask me, are you angry? Did I make you angry? Things like that. But positive attention, what we want to try to give our students is like actually looking at them, playing with them at all ages, listening to them, maybe watching a video or a show with them, hugging them, and really just being empathetic and trying to spend more time with them, especially one-on-one time. I know some students with siblings, they start to feel a little left out. So that one-on-one time is really key. So here are some more examples of including positive attention. We went over some of them, but just trying to create like more family time, being affectionate. You can also make visual schedules of like time that you're going to spend together. We'll move on.
Yeah, I have a few more things to add to the attention if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you want to go back, maybe oh, to the replacement behaviors. Okay, perfect. So in my class, we see some behaviors like a student will get out of their chair and then sit on the table and look right at you and start laughing. And we're like, okay, they want our attention. And I know it's our inclination to be like, oh my gosh, get off the desk right now. But what we want to do in that situation is give limited attention to that by giving a really light physical prompt, not even really like looking at the student, a direction back to their chair. Once they're demonstrating the appropriate behavior of sitting in their chair, we can prompt them to tap our arm to say, hey, play with me or look at me, and then give them all of that attention that they were probably looking for when they went and sat on the table. Or sometimes we have students who will like just throw their hands in your face, and we're working on them, as Mia said, ignoring that as much as possible, like a slight redirection to put their hand down, and then really giving them a lot of attention for the more appropriate response, which would be, like we said, tapping your arm, or using a communication device to say, "Look at me, play with me," using their words. So for these attention seeking behaviors, I would say as long as they're not like super dangerous, like standing on chairs or jumping off of things, we want to give as little redirection as possible when they're displaying the inappropriate behavior, and as much attention and praise as possible when displaying that appropriate behavior, what we want them to be doing instead. Okay, and the next function is access to tangibles. So this behavior occurs when the child wants access to something. It could be an item. Sometimes it's a person, their favorite person in the classroom, their favorite person at home, access to anything. And it can be before they're going to get access, or it could be we take the item away. It's time to be all done with the item, and then they are having behaviors because they want the item again, or they don't want to clean up. And how do we know that this is the function of the behavior? The behavior occurs as soon as the student sees a preferred item, or like I said, as soon as we take that preferred item away. So for example, maybe in class, another student has the student's favorite toy. The student will go up and lightly tap the child on the arm or look like a little hit. It's the child is doing that because they want to play with the toy too. This behavior occurs when told, like I said, it could also occur when told to relinquish a preferred item or the item is taken away. So for the replacement behavior would be using functional communication training. So we want to teach the student to request the item in an appropriate way. So, for example, we have kids sometimes who they see their favorite item across the classroom and they just run out of their seat to go get it. Instead, we want them to be able to request the item, whether that's using their words, whether that's using their device, pointing at the item, whatever it is. So we see that student get up, we have them sit down again. We say, "Oh, what do you want?" Or "What were you looking at?" We prompt that communication response. Once they ask for it the correct way, we give them the item. Same thing if, say, we have their favorite toy on the table and they just start lunging for it and yelling. We want to redirect them to sit down. We'll say, "Oh, try again. You can tell me what you want." That could either be just having them point to the item, using a device, using their words, whatever their communication method is. As soon as they do it the correct way, we say, "Great job. Here, you can have the item." Another skill is just teaching them to accept another item. I have some examples of how to do that on the next slide. And of course, sometimes a no means no, and we have to follow through with that. And that can be very challenging for our students. So say they want something, we say it's not available. They're communicating to us, they're pointing at it, they're using their words, their device, whatever it is, they're naming the item. And what we say in class, "Oh, we hear you. We hear that you want the item. Thank you for telling me, but I'm sorry, it's not available right now." And if they get upset, we'll either try to get them to accept another item, or possibly they go to the break area, or we use coping skills at the table to help them calm down until they're ready to go to the next activity. But because functional communication is a replacement behavior for tolerating denied access, we do want to acknowledge that they tried to communicate for the item. So here's are some strategies that we use in class to help with this. This first picture is a choice board. So in our classroom at each center, the students have their favorite toys that they work for to practice this denied access. Sometimes we'll put their a preferred toy on the back side of the board, which is red, and we teach them that means that it's not available right now. So this is just a good visual cue for them. We'll present the board. Maybe they ask for their preferred toy. We move it to red for that practice week. Oh man, I'm sorry, it's not available right now. Let's pick something else. And when they pick that other option, we give them a lot of praise. We play with them in this super fun way just to really show them, great job, you did it. You picked the other item. This is a hard skill for the students. To start with teaching this to them, we use items that aren't as preferred. For example, if a student's favorite toy is Play-Doh or Bubbles, we're not going to start out at the beginning of the year with showing that to them and being like, oh, nope, it's not available. We work up to that. We pick toys that they're a little more neutral with to practice this skill. As they get better at it, that's when we'll really practice denying access to their absolute, their favorite toys. Another strategy that we use in class is teaching the student to request more time with the item when appropriate. So I really like this strategy because I think like as adults, we give ourselves more time with things all the time. Like we know, oh, it's bedtime. I should be putting my book away, but I want to read it for a few more minutes. Or even for other, other students, we tell them clean up and they're able to say, oh, I want more time. I want 5 more minutes. Some of our students don't have the words for that yet. So we have a system in place where they can tell us that they want more time, either a visual. We will prompt them sometimes. We'll say, all done, and they'll look like they're not done yet. We're like, oh, looks like you want more time. But we do it in a very structured way. So when they ask for more time, we'll usually use a timer. We'll say, okay, 1 more minute. If you see this Velcro, this is Velcroed. So we'll take off the first Velcro, put it on the back to show them they can ask for more time, 1 more time, and then the toy is all done. And then of course, when it's all done, we follow through. If they get upset, we wait them out until they're ready to move on to the next activity, but we don't give them the toy back. And then this last strategy we use also a lot throughout the day is priming. So especially when their favorite activities are going to end, I do a countdown before it's time to rotate to the next station. At recess, we always do a group announcement. There's 1 more minute left for kids who really have a hard time with leaving recess. We'll go to them individually and say, hey, so-and-so, 1 more minute left. Just for some students with autism, transitioning out of their favorite activities is really hard. So that priming really helps. That's also a good time you can start implementing the more time strategy, letting them know, hey, we're going to be all done in a minute, but you can ask me for more time. And if needed, for some kids who have a really hard time with this, we'll also use a timer, which I know realistically, you guys probably don't have little timers in your pockets all the time, but it's on your phone. So that's a really good tool to use. There's even timers on YouTube. I sometimes play in the class that have songs and visuals and make fun noises when the timer goes off. So that could be helpful as well. But the big thing with access to tangibles is when you do tell them no and you put some of these strategies in place, you have to follow through with the no, regardless of the behavior that they're displaying. And it can be really hard, but the idea is that they're going to learn that, oh, she said no and I'm yelling and I'm throwing things but I'm still not getting the item. The idea is that they're going to learn that those behaviors are not going to get them what they want.
And going along with what Ms. Newcomb just said, sometimes when you're starting to implement these strategies, you can see the behaviors, like they might happen more often, they might get more intense. So the screaming might get louder, the hitting might be harder. But as she said, you just really want to try to follow through as best you can. And if you need any resources, we'll talk about them in the future slides. But it's just the following through and also the praise and the attention when they use a proper strategy is the key to moving those behaviors towards a more functional side.
Yes, that was a great point, Mia. I'll go back to that really fast. That's sometimes called an extinction burst when all of a sudden the strategy that the student was using, the behavior, the negative behavior the student was using to get what they wanted isn't working anymore. You might see an increase in those behaviors at first because they're, and they're thinking, "Oh, this used to work for me in the past, why is this not working?" They're frustrated. That's when we use our coping skills. We use those teaching strategies to teach them the more desired behavior, and it will get better. But you might see a little burst when you're starting out with some of these strategies.
But you got this.
Mhm. So here we just have some information about a behavior intervention plan. So some students with challenging behaviors, they have a written document that addresses the behavior that's interfering with the student's learning. Usually it's written by a teacher, maybe another school staff, like a counselor that's with the student on a consistent basis. So the behavior intervention plan picks one behavior to target, and the goal of the plan is that the teacher or whoever is writing the plan is noticing the function of the behavior and addressing the function of the behavior to include a functionally equivalent behavior to reduce the challenging behavior. And within the plan, there's specific antecedent strategies and teaching strategies laid out. So everyone who's working with the student sees the strategies that are in place to decrease the problem behavior while increasing that functionally equivalent replacement behavior. So, for example, if a student is getting really frustrated consistently during work times, the team thinks that the function of the behavior is that they're trying to escape. Maybe they're falling on the floor every time a task is presented to them. The team will write a behavior intervention plan that targets teaching the student to take a break instead and then coming back to the task. So that functionally equivalent behavior is the student asking for a break instead of just falling on the floor. So eventually, the goal of the plan is that the student asking for a break increases while falling on the floor um, decreases.
Moving forward into our resources, we made a handout for you guys if you to reference after this Zoom is over about the 4 functions of behavior and behavior management techniques. It's available in both English and Spanish. On the link tree, there is also a link to the uh, Long Beach Unified's Family Resource Center, as well as their early wellness referral forms in English and in Spanish. If like you need any more resources, some of the resources that they offer include like individual counseling, parent guardian workshops. But if you want more information about what specifically they have, you should check out the website because it may be different for students with disabilities. They also have a virtual wellness center. On that website, there are some mindfulness tips both for you and for your student. There's also things like they have some games on there, zoo cameras, just some really cool tricks for you guys to look at. Oops. There's also a link to free behavioral health support through Bright Life Kids. It is free behavioral health coaching. It is not therapy, but it's for students in grades kinder through 12, and it can be video or chat based, 1-to-1, and it can also be used for parents as well. And I believe they offer services in 17 different languages, and you don't need to have insurance. And then finally, through Cal State Long Beach and the grant that we're on, Chris offers free parent workshop videos. They're on YouTube for your reference. And this Zoom will also be uploaded on there if you guys want to go back and check anything that we had mentioned before.
I think we'll start if anyone has any questions. Okay, so I have a question about the breathing strategy during the break exercise and then go back to the task requested. Okay, so for that, the goal is really just figuring out, noticing the student's body language as to when it looks like they're starting to calm down. That's when we want to bring them to the task, bring them back to the task. So if that's, taking it, usually when we teach deep breaths, we do a model with our fingers so that they're sort of seeing like what the breath looks like. Like, okay, we're going to take 5 breaths and put your fingers down. So they're seeing the concept of breathing in and out. We'll also use language like, oh, let's blow out the candles. And because, they love birthdays and birthdays, that's meaningful to the student. So we can do that with our fingers too. Oh, you look upset. Let's take some deep breaths and blow out the candles. And I would just say monitor their body language and see when they're starting to calm down. And if you're doing the breathing with them and they're not calming down, maybe it's another strategy that's going to help. Like some students love music, it could be starting to hum a little bit of their favorite song. Maybe they need some squeezes to help them calm down. Maybe just that timer of like, okay, break is going to be done in a few minutes. We're going to get back to the task. Maybe just hearing the timer will help them. Um, Yes, well, all of that. I would say that's a great point. It's really important, and we work on this at school too, to just try to figure out what a student's preferred coping strategy is. And for some students, their coping strategy is time. If they need to be in break for a really long time and they're not calming down, we'll let them have their space. Once we see that they're starting to be compliant with our directions again, they're just in a better mood, their body language is much more relaxed. That's when we notice, okay, it looks like they're calmed down now. We're going to bring them back to the task. Um, yeah, and if you feel like you have further questions about that, feel free to put it in the chat. And then we have a question about limiting computer time at home once the child has had unlimited access. I think with that, I would use a timer and possibly, present a different task first. Like, first, we're going to do this. Then you can have the computer, whether that be playing with another toy that they like, a puzzle, something, keeping them busy while keeping them busy for that duration of the timer and then giving them the computer. And as they're getting better with it, you can increase that time that they're going without the computer. Does that make sense? I would use a timer. And as we said earlier, the increments for this might have to start really small. It could be they play with another toy or just sit and wait for the computer for a few seconds. And then once they've sat calmly waited, they get the computer. And that's another key, is that you want to have them sitting or playing calmly. If they're displaying the behaviors while they're waiting and the timer goes off, you need to, stop the timer and be like, oh, sorry, try again. We need to have a calm body, quiet mouth, whatever it is that they need to get the computer. And if the wait time was just too long, you can just shorten it to like even a 3-second countdown while they're displaying the appropriate behavior. Then they get the computer. As they're understanding that, you can start increasing the time between each activity and getting the computer. But again, if they're waiting and they're starting to display those inappropriate behaviors, I would stop the timer and say, oh, we're going to try again. Maybe reset the timer back a few seconds so that the wait time isn't as long. But make sure that they don't get the computer when they're displaying those behaviors. And just like I said, follow through. It could be really hard at first, especially if they are used to being on the computer all the time. That's a challenging one, but they'll understand once you
I
use a lot
would
of structure.
I would also say too, once they do have the computer time and they've earned it, to be using the antecedent strategies of, okay, let's say they can use the computer for 15 minutes. Let them know at the beginning, all right, you're gonna have computer for 15 minutes and then we're going to do, and then have that task ready for
Mhm.
them. and then reminding them throughout their computer time. Maybe you remind them again at 10 minutes. Okay, you have 10 minutes left, 5 minutes left, and then you have 1 minute left. That way, just they have it in their head that their time is going to be limited.
Parking for everyone.
And then
5:30 p.m.
it's up to you if you want to offer more time. And then they can practice working on asking for more time.
It's paid. It's paid, but it's
Another thing that
after
can help with that
5:30.
too is a visual schedule of what they're doing after school, and then you can have, wish I would have put an example of it in here, but you
Okay.
could make little icons of, you know, after school, like
Are you in
book,
the-
and then
the
computer, like
parking
pictures,
lot
and then
with
you're
the
going
CSULB,
to
or
do
is
a little
there
homework and then computer, so they know exactly what they have to do before the computer and then what they have to do after the computer to earn the computer again. And as they're getting better with that, you can,
yeah,
you know,
it's
start taking off some of those
whichever one
computer
you end up
icons
with.
or taking it
Also,
out of their schedule a little bit more as they're getting used to that system. Any more questions about that?